Blessings and good evening. We'll begin the first part of this session practicing meditation together quietly until the sound of the bell. Then we'll do some chanting, followed by a Dhamma talk from Luang Kalyano on this occasion of the eve of our Buddha statue installation here at Bodhipala Monastery, where tomorrow we'll be installing 28 Buddha statues into the chedi. So for now we can quietly practice meditation together until the sound of the bell. We'll now continue with some chanting. Firstly, we can begin on page 17 of Chanting Book, Volume 1. And then after the introduction, we'll move on to the auspicious Purita Chanting, which can be found on Volume 2, page 100, on this occasion of the eve of the installation of 28 Buddha statues. This evening we will also chant a special Purita chant in recollecting the 28 Buddhas of the past. As you can see in the front of our hall, we have them all been blessed by Luang Kalyano earlier today, with gold leaf on every single one of them. So to give them extra special energy in our monument, our chedi called the Supata Chetya, and this will take place tomorrow at about midday tomorrow. Luang Kalyano will be enshrining these beautiful statues into the chedi, and a special golden enshrining room at the bottom of the chedi. Once that's sealed, we'll no longer be able to see them anymore, so it's a great blessing for us to see them all displayed here in front of us this evening. So we can begin with the evening chanting. Yeah. Yo so bhagava arahang samma sambuddho sawakkato yena bhagavata dhammo subhadipano yassa bhagavato sāvaka sangho namayang bhagavantang satamang sasakang ime yasakare hiyatarahang arobite hiyapipushayama sadhuno pante bhagava suchira pariniputopi Pashima Janata Dukam Pamanasa Ime Sakare Dukatapana Karabute Patikam Hatu Amhakanti Karatang Hitaya Sukaya Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Antamayang Buddhasa Bhagavato Pupapakanamakarang Karumase Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato วนาเมตังสัมพิทาปะทันตาอาภิกิตาจิตาปริทังปนันตุสากิคเมจารุเปอิริสิกาลทเตชันทลิเกวิมาลีติเพระเตชะคัมเมตารวนาคหเนเกหวตุมหิกิเตอุมาชยันตุเทวาจัลทลวิสเมยกะคันทปนาคาติทันทสันติเกยังมุนิวรวัชนังสัตวุมิสุนันตุธัมมสวนาคาโลหยัมปตันทาธัมมสวนาคาโลหยัมปตันทาธัมมสวนาคาโลอายัมปตันทานะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะ จะปาลานังปันติตานังจะเสวนาปุจาจะปุจานิยานังเหตัมมังกะลมุตตมังปฏิรูปเทสวาโสจะปุเปจะกตปุญญาตาตัสสัมมาปณิทิจะเหตัมมังกะลมุตตมังปะกุสาจันจะสีปัญจะวินัยโยจะสุสีกิโตสุมาสิตาจะยาวาจาเอตัมมังกะลมุตตมังมาตาวิตุปาทานังพุทธทาราสสังฆโหอนาคุราจะกัมมันตาเอตัมมังกะลมุตตมังกานันจะธัมมจริยาจะญาตกานันจะสังฆโหอนาวาจานิกัมมานิเอตัมมังกะลมุตตมังอารณิวิรัติปาปามาจะปานาจะสัญญโมอาปมาโตจะธัมเมสุเอตัมมังกะลมุตตมังการะโตจะนิวาโตจะสันตุติจะกตัญญูตากาเลนะธัมมาสัพพนังเอตัมมังกะลมุตตมังขันติจะโสวะจะสัตตาสมานานังจะสาสนังกาเลนะธัมมาสักกัจจาเอตัมมังกะลมุตตมังตะโพจะพระมจริยาจะอริยสัจจานาตาสนังนิพพานาสัจกิริยาจะเอตัมมังกะลมุตตมังพุทธัสสะโลกธัมเมหิชิตังยาสนะกัมปติยโสกังวิราชังเกมังเอตัมมังกะลมุตตมังเอตาดิสานิกตวานะสัพพะธรรมปราชิตาสัพพะตโสติกาจันติตันเตสัมมังกะลมุตตมังทิยังกินชีวิตังหิตวาหุรังวาสาเกสุวายังรัตนังปณิตังนะโนสมังอาทิตตากเตนะอิตังปิปุเตระนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัตติโหตุขยังวิรากังหมตังปณิตังยดาจักขาสาขยมุนีสมาหิโตนะเตนะธัมเมนะสัมมาทิกินจิหิตัมปิตัมเมรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัตติโหตุยังพุทธเสโตปริวานะเยสุจิงสมาธิมานันตริกัญญมาหุสัมมานินาเจนะสมุนาวิชติตัมปิตัมเมรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัตติโหตุเยปุคลามาตัสสะตัมปัสสัทธาชาตาริเหตานิยุคานิโหติเตตากิเนยาสุขตาสสาวกาเอเตสุตินานิมหาภลาอิหิตัมปิสังเฆรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัตติโหตุเยสุ
สลินายันตังสันตังปะรังอภิสัมมิจัสสะโกอุจุจัสสุจุจัสสุวัชจุจัสสะมุตวันติมานิสันตุสะโกจัสสุปะโรจะอาปะกิโจจัสสะลาหุกะหุติสันติตริโยชานิปะโกจะอาปะกาปุกุเรสุวรรณนุกิโตนะชะคุตังสมาชะเรกินชิเยนะวิญญุปะเรอุปวะเตยังสุขิโนวาเกมิโนโหตุสาเปสัตตาภวันตุสุขิกาตาเยเกชิมานะพุทธาติทัสสาวะตาวราวะอนาวเสสาติกาวาเยมหันตาวะมาชิมาราสกาอนุกตุลาติตาวาเยชาตินาเยชตุเรวสันติอวิทุเรพุทธาวาสัมภเวสีวาสาเปสัตตาภวันตุสุขิตาตานะภโรปรังอิกุเวทนาทิมันเยตกาตชิยังกินชิบายาโรสนาปฏิกสัญญานัญญมัญญาสดุขมิเชยมาตายตานิยังพุทธังอายุสาเอกพุทธมนุราเชเอวัมปิสาปะพุทเตสุมาณสัมภาวะเออปริมาณังเมตัญจะสาปะโลกัสสมิงมาณสัมภาวะเออปริมาณังพุทธังอโตจติริยังจะสัมปาทังอเวรังอสสปาตังติตังชรังนิสินโนวาสยานโนวายาวตาสวิกตมิโตเอตังสติงอติเตยกรรมเมตังวิหารังกิตมาหุติติงจานุปกรรมศีลวาตาสเนนะสัมปันโนกาเมสุวินัยเกตังนะหิจาตุกาปัสสยังปุณเรติติอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสั สุตตาตังพระมังวิสุทธิจุติมิทิภกามิทานังญาณกเทนะวิธินาชิตาวามุนินโตทันเตชะสาภวตุเตชยมังคลานิเอตาปิพุทธชยมังคลาอัตตกาตายโยวาชโนทินาทิเนสารเทมทันติตวานาเนกวิวิธานิสุปาทวานิโมขังสุขังอธิกเมยนารุสัพพัญโยมหาการุณิโกนาโตหิตายะสัพพปานินังปุเรตวาปารมิสัพพปัตโตสัมปุติมุตตมังเอเตนะสัจวาเจนะโหตุเตชยมังคลังชยันโตปุติยามุเลสักยานังนันทิวาทโนเอวังกวังวิจโยโหหิจยาสุจยมังกะเรอราชิตปาลังเกสีเสปะทวิโภกะเรอภิเสเกสาปะพุทธานังภากาปะโตปะโมทติสุนาคาตังสุมังคลังสุปปาตังสุหุติตังสุขโนสุโมโหโตจะสุยิตังพระมจาริสุปทากินังกายกรรมังวาจากรรมังปทากินังปทากินังมโนกรรมังปณิทิเตปทากินาปทากินานิกตวานลปันตเตปาตากิเนภวตุสัพพมังคลังราคันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพพุทธานุภาเวนัสสตาโสติภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังราคันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพธัมมานุภาเวนัสสตาโสติภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังราคันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพสังฆานุภาเวนัสสตาโสติภวันตุเต
Page 31. The verses of sharing an aspiration in Pali. Antamayyang uti sanatithana kathayo kanamase imina punya kamina upachaya gurutara achariyupakara shamata pita chanyataka Suriyo Chanti Maharaja Gunawanta Narapicha Rama Maharaja Indasha Lokapalaja Devata Yamomita Manusaja Machata Virika So next we would like to invite Tanjokun Luang Kalyano to say a few words on Dhamma this evening, on this occasion of our eve of installing our 28 Buddha statues, which will be enshrined in the Supata Chettiya here at Bodhipala Monastery.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Blessings. Good evening, everybody. This weekend we've come together for the installation ceremony. The 28 Buddha statues in the hall here are all going to be installed in the new Supata Chettiya, or stupa, Buddhist monument here at Bodhipala Monastery. So it's another kind of landmark or historic moment in the history of the monastery. Since March earlier this year, when Luang Prom Wachirayan Sopon came to visit and began the project with the foundation stone. Jnana Depot and the Sangha here and lay community have all come together to begin building this Buddhist monument in homage to the Buddha, as an act of veneration or worship and remembrance of the Buddha. As this is a Buddhist monastery, the land was offered for that purpose. And one of the few things that the Buddha praised to be built in his name, say, was a chettiya, somewhere to house relics, the ashes, the bones of the Lord Buddha, or a small part of them. He said this is something Buddhists can do. And so since the time of the Buddha till today, people have been building chettys, smaller or larger, around the world, mostly in Asia, but nowadays even in countries like Australia, in memory of the life and the practice of the Buddha, and to house the relics of the Buddha. The chetties tend to have certain similarities. The main one is they're all built to last, to be strong, so have strong foundations and to be kind of solid. So they tend to be built out of bricks or stone or concrete, although often decorated, again out of love, respect, veneration for the Buddha. Mostly of a round shape, but quite often also can be 8-sided, octagonal, occasionally sort of with some square sided ones as well. Tend to be pointed buildings, so going upwards towards the sky, symbolically or representing the chakra or the pure energy of the enlightened mind coming out of the Buddha. So they say when people look to the Buddha, sometimes they would see the Buddha's aura, the rainbow aura around the jitta of the Buddha, but also sometimes we could see the kind of the flame, which is now often symbolized in Buddha statues. You get a flame coming out of the top, and the pure energy of a fully enlightened Sambuddha. So chetties again represent that. So it's a milestone for this monastery because the shape of the chetty has come up now, so you might say about halfway. The structure already has taken on the characteristics of a chetty. I think most people come here can see it in that way, even though it's not finished. But it's also been reached a point where there's now a kind of a space, cavity or room inside the chetty, and soon the next stage of the building will be that that room will be enclosed, covered over, and the bell-shaped part of the chetty, the next stage, will be built. So before that, we wanted to install the 28 Buddha statues and some other auspicious things. These will never be seen unless one day the chetty sort of collapses or is broken up, maybe one day to be rebuilt. Then maybe the statues will come out to inspire people in future generations. But at least we'll know, the people who built it will know they're there. And Buddhist buildings are often like that. You don't get to see, maybe you've sponsored one of the Buddha statues, you won't see it, but you know it's there, so it sort of inspires you, and to practice brings up a good feeling, good memory. So that's what we're doing tomorrow, and we're recollecting, the qualities of the Buddha. Tonight we chanted the Paritta, the Atavisati Paritta, the 28 Buddhas, just naming from the text. We have these 28 names of previous Buddhas. It just makes an important point that we tend to just quite correctly think of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, our historic Buddha of this era. Even though he passed away 2,500 years ago, we still have his name, we know his life story, and we have his teachings being handed down to us until this day. But another aspect of the Buddha is that the Buddha, there's not just one Buddha forever. So they say, once a Buddha passes, enters parinibbana, and eventually through impermanence, the teachings of the Buddha and the different aspects of the religion, the practitioners, the buildings, the monasteries and everything gradually disappear from the world, even though that may take a long time. Eventually they'll be gone. And then one day there'll be another Buddha. And so there have been from period to period, long periods of time between each Buddha, but through history there have been Buddhas, because the Buddha is not totally unique, it's more like a position or something that an individual can aspire to, and maybe through great effort, endurance and after a long time, their aspiration to become a Buddha, that being, who we call a Bodhisattva, may actually become a Buddha. And so over time, there have been a number of different Buddhas that we know about, and stretching back probably for how long we don't really know. But we have these 28 names, and so the 28 Buddhas we're installing, the statues we're installing, represent those different Buddhas. Sometimes people prefer to disregard this side of the Buddhist teachings about past lives, future lives, karma, and it's probably not absolutely necessary really to talk too much about past Buddhas, future Buddhas and so on. Because the Buddha himself emphasized the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. We're here to practice free our minds from the causes of suffering in this very life, in this present moment. But there's still something to be gained by recollecting previous Buddhas and how a Buddha comes to be through the great effort of a great being, what we call a Bodhisattva, or probably more commonly called Bodhisattva. So our Buddha, Gautama, the Buddha, they say his official journey began way back in the time of a previous Buddha, one of those 28 Buddhas, Dipankara the Buddha, who was alive and had a great retinue of monks and was teaching what you might nowadays call Buddhism, but in a totally different historical era. And our Buddha, going back to that time, in that life, was a hermit called Sumedha, living in the hills, meditating, and so probably already quite advanced in his spiritual attainments, in what we call his barami, but not a Buddha and not enlightened, but somebody, a spiritual seeker you might call him. But then hearing that the Buddha Dipankara came to town, he came down from the hills to meet him, because he was interested to meet enlightened teachers, and that's the reputation a Buddha has wherever he goes. And when he saw Dipankara the Buddha and all his monks walking towards him, he was on the edge of town, and they say there was a muddy stream that the Buddha, Dipankara Buddha, would have to cross. So Sumedha flung himself across the stream to form like a human bridge, and invited the Buddha to walk across his back. And they say, as the Buddha was walking across his back, he made this vow: I vow to become, or made a resolution or determination, call it an adhitthana, to become a Buddha in the future, to practice, perfect the barami until I can become a Buddha like the Buddha who is walking on my back, stepping over my back. And Dipankara the Buddha, with that great knowledge, kind of limitless knowledge of a Buddha, knew what the hermit Sumedha was thinking, and turned to tell the monks, this hermit has vowed to become a Buddha, and he will become a Buddha. In a distant future lifetime, he'll be known as Siddhartha Gautama, and gave some brief, so they say, they gave some brief description of his life, his final life as the Buddha in the future, and he said this will come true. And the way a Buddha works, when a Buddha gives some prediction or says a truth, it's true, it will come true. And they say every Buddha has been confirmed like that at a point in their spiritual development by another Buddha, a previous Buddha. So in this case, Dipankara the Buddha is confirming that Sumedha will become Siddhartha in the future. And from that point on, he's known as a Bodhisattva, a great being destined for enlightenment. But just being called a Bodhisattva isn't enough. You have to do the work, the practice, and that meant eons and eons, many millions of lifetimes, we might say, practicing Dhamma in all forms and different situations, going through all the obstacles that a person aiming to become a Buddha would have to go through life after life. Perfecting the Barami, and not just the ordinary 10 Barami we talk about when monks give talks about the 10 Baramis. You've probably heard them before. The 10 different spiritual qualities have to be perfected for anyone to become enlightened. But to become a Buddha, you have to do them 3 times over. 30 kinds of Barami, meaning the 10 Barami times 3 on 3 levels, on the ordinary level, on the intermediate level, and on the highest level. So the most thorough kind of spiritual preparation before someone becomes a Buddha. And that happens for each Buddha. And that's why having previous Buddhas, they sort of perform the role of teaching Buddhism in their era, but they also confirm bodhisattvas for the future. So this is a part of Buddhism not always talked about because maybe it's not so important, but it does bring up these points of why we remember the names of these other Buddhas and build monuments to the Buddha and to the qualities of a Buddha, because every Buddha shares certain qualities. The 30 Baramis or the 10 Baramis perfected on 3 levels. The great wisdom, compassion, purity of mind. And every Buddha is supremely self-enlightened. There's actually 3 kinds of Buddhas that arise in the world. There's Sammasam Buddhas, so self-enlightened, which are the most important because they're self-enlightened, but they also teach the Dhamma, establish the religion, teach monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen. So spread the teachings so other beings can follow and practice. As opposed to Pacceka Buddhas, who are more private or reclusive and still teach maybe, but in a very much more limited sense, and don't establish the religion. So they'll come along when there's not a Buddha in the world. You may get Pacceka Buddhas. There's a mountain in Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, which has a certain very special energy. If you ever go there, it's a place called Ching Dao. And at the base of the mountain or nearby, there was a cave where one of the disciples, enlightened disciples of Luang Por Man lived. His name was Luang Por Sim. And he lived in a cave, became enlightened, and a very loved and respected teacher in northern Thailand until he passed away about 30 years ago maybe. But if you ever go to his monastery, you can look across the valley to this mountain with these dark, craggy rocks on top of it, which has a certain kind of energy which draws the eyes of anyone hiking or in that area. Even before you know the background of that mountain, you probably feel there's some special energy there, and you might look at it and feel, there's something special about this mountain. Anyway, Luang Por Man, who lived and practiced in that area for many years, said this mountain is special, and the reason it has this special energy is because many Pacceka Buddhas have lived there over the eons, lived and died there. So Pacceka Buddhas arise when there's no Sammasam Buddha. Pacceka Buddha is self-enlightened but kind of private, more reclusive Buddhas arise in the world. But then we also have the third kind of Buddha, Sāvaka Buddhas. So that's arahants, who we're probably, you might say, probably all aspiring to enlightenment. We all want to be free from stress, suffering, free from dukkha. So we're aspiring to enlightenment. If we attain enlightenment this life or in the future, then we become Sāvaka Buddhas. So Buddhas in the sense we're enlightened, but Sāvaka as in one who's received instruction rather than being self-enlightened. So these are the three kinds of Buddhas. But every time we build a statue or a chedi, a monument, and also through our practice on a daily basis, we're recollecting these qualities of the Buddha, the enlightened mind. This is what we aspire to, and this is what gives rise to faith and energy in the practice. That's another reason we build a chedi, is to have a place that you go, you remember or recollect the Buddha, and you get some energy to keep practicing. And many people, as you know, make pilgrimages up to different chetiyas, particularly in India, where the Buddha himself lived, or our Buddha lived. So people go to Bodh Gaya, the Mahabodhi Chetya, but then also to other important Buddhist locations in India, but they're also in other Buddhist countries, Tibet, China, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Burma, and so on. And maybe one day even Bodhipala Monastery will become a pilgrimage site where people go to worship at the chedi housing the Buddha relics, and it'll be a cause for them to be happy, to delight in the Dhamma of the Buddha, and then to practice, to chant, meditate, listen to the Dhamma, keep precepts, practice dana, and so on. You know, chedi is a rallying point, both in the making of it, because many people, sangha and laity, come together to make the chedi. So it's a great cause for a focal point for people's harmony and joint effort to build the monument. But then it's also, once it's built, it's a focal, a rallying point for people's faith to come and practice. So it carries on. And because we build them strong, they'll last for a long time, we hope. Can be strong against the elements and so on, then that rallying point and that purpose will continue. It will serve its purpose, hopefully for a few generations or many generations. So there's actually a lot to recollect when you build and when you come to worship at a chedi. The one thing I often quote, when I was living with Luang Por Chah, and then Luang Por Chah passed away, within 1 year, the Luang Por Liam, leading the Sangha of Luang Por Chah, Sangha and laity, built a chedi to honour his memory, to honour the memory of Luang Por Chah. And due to people's great faith, they worked day and night for literally 365 days to build a chedi, build the mound, the wall, and then the chedi, and get it all ready for his cremation, which happened a year after his death. He was cremated in a massive cremation funeral service presided over by the King and Queen of Thailand, Prime Minister, politicians, VIPs from Thailand and even overseas, and of course thousands and thousands of Sangha members. A massive funeral. But that was built through the efforts of the faithful Sangha and laity on a fairly low budget, because a large amount of labour was voluntary. A lot of the building materials were offered and so on. And that chedi was built, and to this day, 34 years later, it's still a focal point for people's faith and practice, and people go there every day to maybe bow and meditate, bow and chant, circumambulate, do walking meditation around it. It's a very inspirational place. It's just in a forest, fairly ordinary looking forest in northeast Thailand, but there's something special there because of the energy first of Luang Por Chah, the pure mind, we believe, of an Arahant, and then also the good energy developed by all the practitioners, monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen who practice there. and continue to do that over the years. And that's Luang Por Chah's legacy. So the chetty here we're also dedicating to Luang Por Chah. We call it Subhata Chettiya. Subhata or Subhato is Luang Por Chah's Pali name he was given when he became a monk. So we hope that this chetty will also be a cause for people to practice in the coming years. And that's what a monastery is for. It's a place for what we call Patipati Puja. Patipati Puja means worshipping the goodness of the Buddha through the practice. Amisa Puja, worshipping with giving. We give flowers and candles and incense at the shrine. Patipati through the practice. So when Luang Por Chah passed away and that chetty was finished and we had the funeral, on the day of the funeral, Luang Por Mahabua came to Wat Pah Pong. He's a contemporary teacher, the same era of Luang Por Chah, and he had great respect for Luang Por Chah. Luang Por Chah had great respect for him. So he came and gave a talk and stayed in the monastery. And part of my duties was to help look after him. It's an honor for me to look after the great visiting teacher, and this is something Luang Por Chah emphasized in his teachings. As monks, we have to look after the senior monks, respect them, but help them, look after them in many ways. So I was helping to look after Luang Ta Mahabua, and at one point he pulled me aside during the middle of a very busy day, or this funeral service was going on, but he pulled me aside, he said, "Hey you," in Thai he said that. I don't know how you say that in Thai, or Tan, Mani, something like that. He said, "Hey you," he said, "come here." He said, Luang Por Chah has passed away now, and you built this chetty. Don't become a hungry ghost, just clinging to the chetty. And what he was doing, he was quoting a story from Luang Por Man. And Luang Por Man told the story of a monk and his sister, an upasika, who had great faith in the Buddha. And they built a chetty, spent their life building this chetty, beautiful chetty. And chetties often take a long time to build and a lot of effort. And they built it, and then when they died, they became ghosts, hungry ghosts, floating around this chetty because they were over-attached to it. So he pulled me aside and said, your teacher's died, don't just become a hungry ghost floating around the chetty you've built, sweeping and not knowing what to do and not knowing anything better to do. It's something you have to use as a spur, as a motivation to go on and practice. Get enlightened. Don't spend all your time just sweeping the chetty. Go off and meditate. Meditate more. Your teacher's passed away, do it more. Practice. Reduce and finally abandon your defilements, greed, anger and delusion, these causes of suffering in our heart. So you build a chetty, and it's a very good thing for everyone. No one owns the chetty, it's just a monument for the benefit of beings in the world. But don't cling to the chetty, is the message. You don't cling my chetty or my project, or this chetty is my beautiful chetty, or the chetty I like. Somebody might like the chetty to the point where that's all they think about, or they become obsessed with it or something. It's something to stimulate your practice, but not to cling to, because clinging is the whole point of Buddhist teachings. It's giving us the insight not to cling, whether it's a statue, beautiful statue, as we have here, 28 beautiful statues, or chetty, or a meditation hall, or a monastery, or anything. Don't cling, because that will pull you to the world and pull your heart to the world. And even something very good like a chetty can still be a cause for clinging, which is a shame if that happens. So everything we do in Buddhism and in our practice, even when we build devotional buildings and statues and so on, is not for clinging, but for the path, the practice, for enlightenment, for liberation. And it's something you have to keep coming back to. You do the job. If you're building, you do your meditation, you do the job, and then you let go. You keep your precepts, you let go. You offer the dana, you let go. You meditate, you let go. You make your mind peaceful and experience states of peace, bliss, one-pointedness, and then you let go. You develop insight into impermanence, into not-self, and you let go. And that's the purpose of it. So Chedi is no different than any other aspect of the practice. It's a place for letting go. So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight, and in a moment we'll pay homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha.
Antamayang uwadakata satu karang tatamase satu 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 anamodami.
I'd like to thank Tanchokun Kalyano for giving us a Dhamma reflection this evening regarding the importance of Chaityas, and this is a great inspiration for us, especially coming up to our installation day tomorrow. So for now we can pay respects to the Triple Gem, and for those of you who are available, tomorrow our program will begin at 10 a.m. Lay people will gather at the monastery, and then 10:30 we'll have our rice bindabat, followed by Sanghadana, blessing from the Sangha as well, and then following the shared meal together at about midday or thereabouts, we'll begin our ceremony up at the Supata Chaitya. So you're more than welcome to join us for the event. For now we can pay respects to the Triple Gem.
Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhiwademi Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
Sangha will pay respects to Luang.